third phase of moon.
Welcome back. Blake Cousins here, Third Phase of Moon. I have an interview with David Wilcock that I wanted to share with you. We go into a discussion in regards to the Space Force and why the social media network is trying to basically suppress information that has some knowledge that needs to be revealed. What is the problem with the information on social media and why are they trying to hide it?
What's going on here? Why would people be so upset about the secret space program? Why would they care? Why would the, if you want to call it that, the deep state, use social media against us in this way? In other words, if we're not telling you the truth, if this is all just a big make-believe, when you try to sanitize people's opinions, there's clearly an agenda behind that. And that is like popping open the manhole cover to a really dark sewer that a lot of people don't want to look at. But you know what? If we don't go deep within and try to find the reasons for why these very bizarre things are happening in our society, then we are doomed to repeat the same mistakes that we've been making all throughout recorded time. And I don't think that that's where we need to be as a society at this point. I think we need to transcend the idea of my way or the highway, might makes right, take it or leave it. This kind of stuff. The internet is supposed to be free. It's supposed to be something where everybody can talk. And that's another question that I've asked to people who are skeptical about the things that we talk about, like the secret space program. I asked them this question. Well, if you are so threatened by this information that you need a corporation to prevent you from even seeing it, don't you feel that you're cool enough, knowledgeable enough, smart enough, intelligent enough to understand for yourself what's true? Don't you feel that you have the pizzazz in your life to be able to decide whether you want to believe something? Do you really need a company like Facebook to tell you the truth? I've had different answers regarding President Trump and whether, in fact, he has been briefed on the extraterrestrial presence. One of the things that I think I can get away with saying, and there's always a risk here, is that Pete Peterson told me that during the time of the 2016 election, remember, Gaia was advertising our show Cosmic Disclosure on the front page of Drudge Report, which was grand central for all of the news related to the election. So there we are on the front page, being seen by millions and millions of people, and during that time, Pete had some episodes on the show. Somehow, according to Pete, Trump actually did phone him and asked him, is the stuff that you're saying in the show with David Wilcock actually true? And Pete said yes, and Trump said, thank you, that's all I need to know. It was a very short conversation. So, does Trump know what's really going on? And from what I've heard, again from Pete Peterson in this case, you don't get your full cosmic security clearance. Even as the President of the United States, they don't give you that clearance until you've been president for 2.5 years. And he hasn't quite been president that long yet. Because remember, the election was at the end of 2016, so you have the year 2017, 2018. So based on that statistic, Trump wouldn't be getting information about the cosmic level of clearance until mid-2019. However, we do believe that thanks to this group called the Alliance, which is, again, an international group comprising a majority of the different countries of the world, their governments, their militaries, and a surprising number of the military and intelligence community here in the U.S. They are all working now for a common goal, which is to stop this insanity that is going on with the globalist elite who are literally trying to depopulate the planet. They want to reduce how many people are here by billions. They even put that initiative out there in the so-called Georgia Guidestones, where it says that they want to bring the planet's numbers down to 500 million people. Now, I've heard from certain insiders that they've now bumped the number up to potentially as high as 2 billion, but that still means 5 billion people gone. And this is insanity. Remember, They do have very elaborate underground facilities that can hold millions of people. They have incredible underground drilling technology. They have the ability to build incredible cities in a relatively short time. And that is where a lot of our money is going. Our money is not just disappearing, it's going underground and it's going off planet. And this is no different than what we see in the history of Rome, in which Rome was expanding so much that now all of their money is offshore because they're busy trying to build empires outside the homeland, and the homeland ends up crumbling. Except in this case, the homeland is the Earth's surface. What we're not seeing is these gorgeous, glistening, beautiful underground cities. All of these various shuttle systems that they call the sub-shuttle that allows you to be transported at very high speeds from one city to another. We don't see all the spacecraft that they've been designing. We don't see the elaborate build-outs they have on the moon, which are usually on the dark side so that we don't see the lights when the moon is obscured by the Earth's shadow. We don't see any of the stuff that they've got on Mars. We don't see the stuff that they have on various other moons and asteroids in our solar system. This is real. This is not science fiction. We are being lied to on an unbelievable level. And Trump definitely is aware of at least a good part of what is going on. They don't answer to anybody, they're not accountable to anybody, and they have a technological advantage that makes it very difficult to approach them on their own terms. But this is another interesting area, which is the idea that the secret space program itself, despite being what Richard Dolan would call a breakaway civilization, actually does have its own alliance where they are doing their part to try to bring all of their technology to us. Understand that the whistleblowers I've spoken to, the insiders, have said that the technology in the secret space program is so vast that it would literally solve all of the problems we have on Earth. Clean up radiation, desalinate water and bring it to the point where it's drinkable, greening the deserts, solving all of our problems with trash, solving all of our problems with hunger, with poverty, starvation, homelessness, you name it. There is nothing that we can't do with the technology that already exists. This technology also includes portal travel, the ability for us to go to the stars. It's truly phenomenal stuff, and it shouldn't be kept hidden from us. So wouldn't it be amazing if President Trump decided to come forward with what he knows? And that seems to be a big part of what's going on here. And I've been talking about this for many years. Pete Peterson was giving me briefings from the Alliance all the way back in 2009, where they had a plan to do mass arrests of the people in the so-called deep state.
Is the recent vamping up of the Space Force in regards to maybe some kind of hostile alien threat amongst us?
So President Trump mentioning that he's creating a Space Force and this is going to be a new branch of the U.S. military is certainly a very interesting point. And in fact, my fellow commentator Benjamin Fulford recently just told me that he was listening to radio in Japan and they were recruiting soldiers for a Space Force and said that it would be similar to serving on a ship. This is happening now. So we have some really interesting stuff going on here. What does Trump mean by a Space Force? What are we really hearing here? Where is this all going? I have received briefings about what this is supposed to be and where it's taking us. And it is very interesting. It does appear that we as a planet may need to fight some kind of a battle, because from what I've been hearing from various insiders, there is a very serious battle going on in space right now. We did apparently have a group of extraterrestrial beings that are highly evil, that have been written throughout our histories and our mythologies, going all the way back to the ancient Hindu scriptures, where they have Rakshasas, also called snakes, humanoid beings that look reptilian that are very evil. So this is nothing new. These beings show up in people's fears, the archetype of Satan and demons, these beings that have vertical slit pupils, that have scaly skin. there actually is something to that. There's some deep part of our subconscious or our greater higher self that apparently knows these beings exist. All the different ETs that we see are human looking in various forms, but this particular type is indeed derived from reptilian life, but it's reptilian life that evolved into a human-like form. They tend to be a lot taller than we are, sometimes twice the height or more of a conventional human being. They could weigh up to 3,000 pounds, be 14 feet tall, have a 5-foot wide span of their shoulders. These are very nasty beings, and they came to the earth apparently going back to ancient history. They've been tampering with many different cultures throughout time, and they even made a deal with Nazi Germany in the late 1930s before it truly became Nazi Germany and did what it was doing for World War II. All of this stuff is not fiction. I've had too many different insiders who proved their bona fides to me. They showed me the legal documentation of their military service. They speak very articulately. Many of them are not on the record. They all have talked about these reptilian humanoids. And this is one of the things that Above Majestic does so well, is to expose what these beings are, where they came from. We have rare footage from William Tompkins that nobody's ever seen before except for maybe a few people, in which he's talking about this and the fact that he was there in World War II taking briefings from 29 different American spies embedded in Germany's secret space program. And one of the things that they were seeing as they were working in these secret facilities is these tall, reptilian-looking humanoids that were obviously extraterrestrials, telling everybody what to do, running the show, being in charge. Violent beings, beings you do not want to mess with, beings that will kill you if you disagree with them. So everybody's basically in something like a slave camp. Well, what I've heard from Pete Peterson is that in the not too distant past, there was a war in which we, as in Earth humanity, are now throwing off this Draco reptilian control. We are fighting them. We are fighting them in space. We are fighting them underground. There are entire cities that they had that we have destroyed. We have brought up our level of technology to the point that we are now at parity with them. We can fight them on their own territory. Our weapons are as good as their weapons, and it is a very serious battle that involves thousands of ships, many, many thousands of soldiers. And again, most of these people are living in a breakaway civilization. There was something called the brain drain in the 1950s, in which many, many people got shipped off planet, and they are no longer a part of Earth reality. They don't get to come back. They either stay underground or they stay off planet. In some cases, they're told that we wiped out our planet in the 1980s with a nuclear war, but they can't come home, even if they wanted to. And the information is so tightly controlled that there's no way that they would ever know otherwise. So bear in mind that this is the world that I live in. These are the insiders that I talk to. It's very controversial stuff, but we have heard that there may in fact be a need for us to fend off more of this Draco threat, and that there will be a need for people from the conventional world to become aware of this and to engage in the fight. And this is serious. I'm not making this up. This is some of the briefings that I've gotten. I don't know if it's true, but it's certainly a provocative question. We have had a new wave of disclosure in the UFO community. We were already starting to get some of this in the Disclosure Project event in 2001. Some of the witnesses there had some really interesting things to say when they testified on May 9th, 2001 in front of the National Press Club for the world's press. It didn't get the kind of coverage that it should have, but there were 39 people there. I was there the day after, on May 10th, 2001, for the closed executive VIP summary briefing for members of Congress and their aides. I got in as a VIP because I had gotten on to Coast AM with Art Bell, and that was enough to get me press credentials. I'm very, very glad that I got to go, and I did get to meet almost all of those 39 people at that event. That was my introduction to meeting insiders. But then when Project Camelot came out 2006, I actually got together and affiliated with them in 2007, and I began wanting to get introduced to various insiders they had in exchange for trading my own insider information with them. This is where I met Daniel, who claims to have worked on the Montauk project, in which they took a seat out of a flying saucer type of craft, hooked it up to a very high energy power supply, and then with the proper training, a psychic could sit in the chair, and that psychic could think about a particular place, and a portal would open up in the room that you could actually send people through, and they would go to that place. And they quickly figured out they could do this through space and time. Now, Daniel was someone who I spent a long time talking to, many, countless numbers of hours of getting briefings on this. It's a very complicated story, but it fits in with what all the others are saying. Project Camelot comes forward, starts bringing out new information, and I start to meet some of these witnesses, and for whatever reason, they began telling me a lot more than they were telling Bill Ryan and Carrie Cassidy. That's not my fault. It's not something that I wanted them to do, but it just turned out that they were trusting me more for whatever reason. They were telling me things that they didn't want to say to anyone else. They were worried about the possibility that this information would go public, and I convinced them that I would keep their confidentiality. So it wasn't really until I met Emery Smith, Pete Peterson, and Jacob in 2009 that my information on all this started to go into warp drive. And what I've since learned is very important. We do have a war taking place between different types of extraterrestrials. Almost every insider you meet is going to tell you that the vast majority of all the extraterrestrials that are out there visiting us today, using cloaking technology, so we rarely see their ships, occasionally we do. So when we're looking at extraterrestrials, we're looking at that most of them are benevolent. Most of them are the good guys. They've showed up in various cultures as gods, as angels, as benevolent spiritual teachers, and then you have a much smaller number that are very aggressive and very evil. And this war, by the way, between extraterrestrials, this is a war that is fought by proxy. We are the proxies. The choices that we make determine how that extraterrestrial battle takes place. The reason why is that we have a lot of free will over what's going to happen on this planet. So we have to authorize bad things to happen. The authorization comes by us allowing ourselves to be conquered. The negative has to advertise what they're doing. They have to show us the symbols. They do it in music videos. They do it in movies. They do it at the Super Bowl halftime show. They did it in the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies. They put the symbolism in our faces. Many of these various things show us these symbols. For example, the F in the Facebook logo is very similar to the logo for Tubal Cain. We see in the Google Play logo something that looks very much like the sigil of Lucifer. There's lots of examples like this you can dig up if you go digging for it online. My point in telling you this is not to scare you. My point in telling you this is to understand that we actually have the control. We have the control over how the future is going to go. The negative beings are not allowed to do more than what we authorize. And so what their focus is on trying to get us manipulated to the point where we are selfish, greedy, manipulative to one another, and then in so doing, we authorize these disasters to take place. So yes, there are certain national security concerns regarding certain types of ETs, but as long as we on Earth maintain positivity, those ETs cannot come after us and hurt us. I do think we're ready for disclosure. We've had generations of disclosure already happening. We've already heard from great insiders who've given us great information. Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project in 2001 was truly a monumental event. I was very fortunate to be able to be there myself, to meet most of those 39 insiders. And then I had many other insiders come forward to me afterwards. And now it's kind of unfortunate in a way that a lot of these people didn't come forward to anybody else but me. I'm not even really sure why that is. I was very good at keeping people's confidentiality. I'm a great talker. People liked me. They wanted to hang out. So I got to know a lot of different people who had some very interesting things. And when you get into this world, the information is so complicated. There's so many things you hear. You can't possibly remember everything people tell you. It's so intense, but then what happens is you'll be talking to somebody else, and then that somebody else will bring up things that you heard from 2 or 3 other people. And it's as if they're all part of a greater community with a commonly shared body of information that they're all drawing off of. This makes it so unlikely that what I was hearing could have in any way been the product of lying or some kind of elaborate disinformation campaign. I know it's very hard for people to believe that this is true, but there actually is a lot of evidence. When people say there is no evidence, that is something the media has trained them to say. It is a psychological operation run by groups like the Central Intelligence Agency, trying to make you blind to the truth. So if we get some kind of disclosure, are we going to get the whole truth, or are we going to only get part of the truth, or is it all going to be made up?
We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the Earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow.
I can't make any type of proclamation that would say for certain how disclosure is going to go down. What I do know is that there are groups on this planet that want to tell us the truth. They want to show us the truth. There are ways in which unequivocal proof could be demonstrated. What it probably is going to come down to, as I have heard from Pete Peterson, is that they are going to do things similar to the World's Fair, in which various extraterrestrial craft that crashed and were recovered and kept in places like Hangar 18, Area 51, will be brought to major cities. There will be displays that happen where you can see the ships. Now, I don't know if they're going to allow people to actually go inside the ships or if they're just going to let them see it from a distance with some kind of barrier in the way. For all I know, they may actually allow you to go inside. So this is what I'm hearing, that there will be a massive amount of technology and information that is released. We very likely will get introduced to various extraterrestrial groups. This is one of the things I've also heard very consistently. And we've also heard that our own military-industrial complex has very advanced craft that they are going to decloak in our atmosphere. And again, people would say, well, yeah, that's a hoax, right? That's just a Project Bluebeam, it's a hologram. Not if they decloak it and they land it and then you get inside and take a ride and they film the whole thing and then you come back and other people go inside and they film it and they come back. We have the power to address our elected leaders. We can write them, we can do petitions, we can do peaceful protests, we can make our voices heard as an electorate. We can bring out the truth, we can speak truth to power, and we can allow ourselves to become those inquisitors who force disclosure to come to the surface, because we will not accept partial disclosure. We will not accept only hearing little bits of the truth. Remember that the things that I've been telling you come from multiple different insiders. There's actually a wealth of scientific evidence that backs all this stuff up. I've written 3 books now with Penguin Random House: The Source Field Investigations, The Synchronicity Key, and The Ascension Mysteries. There's over 1,000 academic references in Source Field. There's over 700 in Synchronicity Key, and there's over 400, I believe, in Ascension Mysteries. So this is a huge body of information. It's not something where I'm asking people to take my word for it. It's not simply the result of 1 or 2 insiders who can be easily debunked. This is the result of talking to dozens of different insiders, doing the scientific research to back up what they say. And we have wonderful YouTube channels like Third Phase of the Moon, who are coming out with truly groundbreaking research every week, bringing you the information you need to understand what's happening in this world, fighting these powers that would try to keep the secrets from us. We can't be held down anymore. Our voices are becoming too strong. We're unifying as a community. We're bringing this message out. and we need your help. We need your help by watching things like Third Phase of the Moon.
If disclosure does happen, who's gonna break it? Is it gonna be the United States? Could it be Russia? Could it be China? Or could it be the extraterrestrials themselves? What's your thoughts?
I really would love to know the answer to this question just as much as anybody else. And again, it's like trying to read the tea leaves before this has actually happened. There are countries that have already tried to do disclosure, but the force of mainstream media censorship and control is very powerful. Look at what's happening with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of these different social media platforms just outright banning people, taking away pages that have millions of followers left and right, doing it for the right-wing side, where it has to do with Republican conservative ideals, doing it for the left wing, where it's about nutrition, organic food, exercise, healthy eating. They're doing it to everybody. And they're really doing it in this field of UFOs, conspiracy theory, conspiracy analysis, the secret space program. All of these mysterious secrets are coming together, and we are getting the truth out. We are the disclosure. So don't wait for a country like China or Russia or the United States to make an official announcement. We are doing this ourselves. You are helping by watching a movie like Above Majestic, a true disclosure phenomenon, a red pill movie that can take somebody who doesn't know anything and give them a truly alarming wake-up call to smell the coffee. This is not something that's going to take years. This is something that could take months. We just need enough people on the same page, bring this message out, doing the research like we see here on Third Phase of the Moon, bringing you knowledge, bringing you information that is transforming the very nature of consciousness itself. And with that, let's go to the next question.
All right, David, I know you and Corey have been friends for quite some time. I just want to get your thoughts. When Corey was explaining to you some of these stories that he explains his visitation to the Antarctic and the war of the reptilians and the avian blues, what was your first thought? Did you think this guy was nuts? And how did you guys first meet anyway?
Okay, that's a pretty complicated question, but let's begin with how did I first meet Corey Goode? Corey Goode began writing me emails, and I think I've traced it all the way back to about 2009. And at the time, he was only leaking to me certain pieces of weird information he'd picked up during his time working for the Texas State Guard. And there was some pretty cool stuff there. We talked from time to time. We had limited amount of dialogue, not a whole lot. We'd talk a few times a year by email. But he didn't ever really tell me what he knew, what he had remembered. That didn't happen until he decided to come forward on a much larger level, the first emails of which I saw in October 2014. And at that time, he emailed Bill Ryan and Carrie Cassidy at Project Camelot. He interviewed, or tried to get an interview with Benjamin Fulford, and he wrote me. Now, I have to admit, when I first got these emails from Corey Goode, I didn't know what to think about this dude. And I kind of just held back. He's talking pretty strange. He's got a lot of weird jargon that I haven't heard before. Let me just watch for a while, see what this guy's up to, see where this is going. I'm not going to make any sudden moves. So he did first interview with Project Camelot. Benjamin Fulford didn't really take the invitation. And I started to see him writing various things in discussion forums, him making various posts. And it was after reading this in more depth that I started to see, oh my gosh, how does he know about that? How does he know about that? How does he know about this? Where did he get that from? Nobody's ever said this publicly before. Where did that come from? How did he get this? And that's when I got excited. I wrote him and I said, dude, we need to talk. And it actually took about a week before he started to talk to me. But very quickly, this is now about the end of October 2014, beginning of November 2014. We began talking for about 2 hours at a time, almost every day. And I had my little recorder running the whole time, so we do have all that audio from all those conversations. There was a certain amount of personal material, but basically I was just interrogating the heck out of this guy. And along the way, I kept bringing up things that I had heard from other insiders, and it was absolutely amazing how much correlation there was with all the different people I met from Disclosure Project, with multiple other insiders, many of whom, for whatever reason, as I said, have only been willing to speak with me. Here's a guy who seems to know little bits of what everybody else has said. He's got this overarching degree of knowledge. It was stunning how many dots were connecting, names of programs, secret code words, very specific pieces of information, very quirky things in which I would start a sentence, he would finish it, and we both are talking about something that we both had heard about, or in my case, I heard about it. In his case, he had experienced it. Now, you mentioned in your question this idea of a war between the blue avians and the Draco reptilians, and I wouldn't really call it that, because the blue avians operate at a level where they don't directly interact with these reptilian beings. They would be more like overseers, giving advice, giving guidance, helping people out. They work at a level where the Draco would never even be able to see them or access them. The war is really more of a war that's taking place between beings that we would consider to be living inside the earth. They are what we would think of as angelic, and when they did end up meeting with Corey starting in March of 2015, it started with the blue avians, and it wasn't until later that he actually met with these inner earth beings that called themselves the Anshar. Now, I have had dreams and visionary experiences with beings just like this my whole life. I had written about it long before Corey came along. Many other people have had similar types of experiences. I don't believe this is fake. These people do seem to exist. They are very human-like. Many of them could pass for people on Earth. You wouldn't notice any difference. And yet, they are very different. They are not the same at all. They have amazing capabilities, amazing technology, and amazing spiritual development. These people are telepathic. They read minds. They have the ability to levitate themselves. Corey actually did go to their cities at one point and saw some of these people levitating. They have very advanced technology, and they represent the next level of human evolution, which apparently we're going to go through as well. We're going to become like these beings, where we can move things with our mind, where we can hear each other's thoughts, where we have access to the different lifetimes that we've led throughout time and space. We can see beyond one incarnation. We have the ability to look beyond the veil of living and dying, to understand this life and the afterlife, see how the two work together, and be able to help facilitate people as they transition from one realm to the other in what we would typically call physical death. It's not really death. You do live forever. Your soul will always exist. And in that sense, nothing's really dangerous, and you will always go on with your identity, with your consciousness. You're never going to be lost. You're never going to fade into some blackness. We don't need to be afraid of death. So what's happening is that these inner earth beings, the Anshar, the fourth dimensional angelic types, are fighting against these demonic, negative, evil reptilians. They are nasty. They are more evil than we could ever even imagine. And this battle's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. It didn't start on Earth. It got brought to us. It's been imported, let's say. And so, as I said earlier in the interview, this is a proxy war. It doesn't just happen here between these beings. It happens between us. The beings are fighting each other based on the choices that we make. The more that we act in a loving, positive, compassionate way, the more that those inner earth beings can fight on our behalf and can win. They have the ability to totally defeat the reptilians. The war only is being fought because of us. And we need to fight for disclosure. Bringing the truth out to the public, getting this information out, will be what defeats this archetypal devil that lives in hell, below the surface of the ground, in these underground bases, some of which, if you went there, are very nasty. And in fact, the reptilians like things hotter than we do. So these, in some cases, are very hot cities with a high temperature. And I know some people are laughing, and that's okay. If you need to laugh in order to hear the truth, that's okay. But what is going to happen is there will be a point at which you're not going to be laughing, in which this is all going to become very serious. disclosed on an official level, no longer subject to this type of laughter, and this war has been going on for a long time. We are involved in the center of it. We are caught in the middle of it. The choices that each of us make on our own free will basis determine the outcome of the collective. Corey Goode is not a god. Corey Goode is not a savior. I've never looked at him that way. I've seen plenty of flaws in him that probably most people never would, and he has seen plenty of flaws in me. I'm a real guy too. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I make dumb mistakes. I use rude language sometimes. I've done it on stage plenty of times. I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be. I'm just a researcher who's had some very interesting pieces of the puzzle put in front of me, and I've taken those pieces and I've run with them, and I've done the homework, and I've done whatever it is, 625 episodes of television now, a lot of stuff. So the other part of the question is regarding Corey Goode's visit to the Antarctic, and that's another really, really complicated subject. Antarctica is a lot more interesting than we have given it credit for. If you look at the Piri-Reis map, where you see the coastline of South America, and then it's joined by a land bridge to what appears to be Antarctica, that's very interesting. And what's even more interesting is the Orontes-Phineas map, which very clearly shows Antarctica. Except it shows Antarctica with a lot less ice. And in International Geophysical Year 1954, we did the first sonar surveys of the land beneath the surface of Antarctica. You'll notice in the Orontes-Phineas map, there's a little chunk over here, and then there's a bigger piece of Antarctica. That's exactly what's really down there that we now know from using sonar, which we didn't know till 1954, and yet this is an ancient map copied over from scrolls that are hidden away in the Vatican Library after they stole them from the Library of Alexandria, pretended to burn the whole thing down, but actually brought all the best stuff to the Vatican. So Antarctica was not always covered by ice. The Earth did shift on its physical axis, apparently because of a nuclear war from extraterrestrial civilizations that had colonized the Earth. And there were two different major types that were here. There was the people with the elongated skulls, which we still find those skeletons all over the planet, and we were able to get this message out. People are ready for the truth. They're hearing what we have to say. No level of government, social media suppression is going to hold us down. The truth is breaking out. So please support channels like Third Phase of the Moon, and please go and see Above Majestic. I want to thank you guys for having me on your channel, and I hope that you watching this will have had fun and learned something you might not have already felt. Or at the very least, you might enjoy laughing at me and thinking that this is all nonsense. But just remember what I told you, because at some point, you will no longer have the luxury of ignorance. Thanks a lot. I'm David Wilcock for Third Phase of the Moon. We'll see you next time.